This is America on the Road, named Best Radio Show by the International Automotive Media Conference, and now in its 31st year on the air. Thanks for being with us as we bring you the latest automotive information from around the world. I'm Jack Nerad. With me is co-host Chris Teague. And Chris, it's good to see you as always. Great to see you.
Good to see you as well. We're in the middle of a significant heat wave here. How are things on your side of the world?
Very pleasant. I hate to rub it in, but we are always about 75 degrees here, so I won't belabor that anymore. You have very big ups and downs where you are, and I, on the other hand, have this very beneficent and wonderful climate that works out very well. So that's our weather report for this week, and thanks for being with us on America on the Road. Now, we also have news, too, news of the auto world, and this week, Jeep has confirmed that it will relaunch the Renegade, the late unlamented Renegade that it threw away a couple of years ago, as a 27 model year vehicle with a base price of less than $25,000 and big headline as an EV. What's your take?
Yeah, I can't wait for it.
Yeah. Well, speaking of EV brands, Elon Musk will get his $56 billion pay package after all. That is if Tesla Motors shareholders get their way. So we'll have more on that coming up. And another continuing saga going on that isn't going nearly as well is Fisker Motors, my hometown car company, has decided to file officially for bankruptcy. This is the car company helmed by car designer turned entrepreneur Henrik Fisker, a guy I've known for years, actually. And BMW has just pulled the curtain away from its all-new X3, and so we'll take a look at that, too. I think if I remember correctly, Fisker was a BMW designer back in the day. So a lot to go over with, right, Chris?
Yeah, there's always something to talk about.
Right. America on the Road is brought to you by drivingtoday.com, emlancy.com, the publisher of my latest book, Dance in the Dark, and Mercury Insurance. If you're looking to save some money, you should switch to Mercury for your auto and home insurance. Californians save an average of $670 with Mercury, so imagine how much you could save. Get a quote today at drivingtoday.com/auto insurance. That's drivingtoday.com/auto-insurance. Well, as you longtime listeners know, Chris lives at one end of the country. I live at the other, the area where better weather, I guess. Each week we get together to talk about cars, the car industry, and how you can save some money on your car. And of course, we also road test a couple of vehicles each week. And Chris, what is your road test vehicle?
I spent the week in the 2024 Subaru Crosstrek Sport. It's a pretty basic crossover, but I had a good time and I can't wait to tell you all about it.
Yeah, I look forward to hearing about it. I had a vehicle that gets a lot of attention is the 2024 Toyota 4Runner TRD Pro. It is actually the outgoing 4Runner, but we will talk about that as we move forward here. And our special guest, of course, is a friend of the program, Matt DeLorenzo, who is the author of How to Buy an Affordable Electric Car. So we've got a ton of show for you. Stay with us, and we'll be right back right here on America on the Road. Welcome back to America on the Road with Chris Teague, Jack Nerad back with you. We're so glad you're with us. We really do appreciate it. A lot of news going on, and one of the things kind of surprising to me is the return of the Jeep Renegade that was announced recently. Not only is it coming back, not only is it starting under $25,000, at least according to Jeep, this to come because this is maybe a year and a half off. It's also going to be all electric. What is your overall take on this?
Well, my first thought is that we've heard this how many times now? We're going to see a $25,000 EV of any type hitting the market, and it hasn't happened yet. I think if Jeep's going to do anything with an affordable EV, the Renegade is the right platform or the right size to kind of approach that. I'm interested. I guess I'll say that.
Yeah. Well, it kind of makes sense. I mean, the Renegade actually is built overseas. It's built in Western Europe. I think it's built in Italy, where maybe a battery electric Jeep makes even more sense than here. So we'll see about that, especially a small one like the Renegade. I'm wondering, and I'm kind of scratching my head, wondering if Jeep is announcing a bunch of all electric vehicles at just the wrong time. I mean, what's your take on that?
Yeah, they kind of dragged their feet a little bit, right? So now they have the Wagoneer S, is that what it's called? And then the Renegade they're coming out with. I don't know. I mean, it's a tough time, but Stellantis in general, at least in the United States, has been slower than Ford, General Motors, some of the others, and getting these vehicles at least announced. I mean, none of them are on the street yet, so I guess time will tell. But it is an awkward time to be announcing a new EV.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we shall see. Well, I guess it's good news for Elon Musk. His $56 billion pay package has been approved by Tesla Motors shareholders, a kind of a strong vote of confidence in his leadership. This was a pay package that had been struck down, I think, by a Delaware judge, and I think it's still maybe threatened by legal action in Delaware. But this is something that the shareholders endorsed. And I kind of get it. I mean, I think he risked a lot to become the CEO and head poobah of Tesla at a time when there was no guarantee of success. A lot of people were predicting disaster. And so I think their success, at least their success in the capital markets, if not, selling vehicles, has maybe justifies this kind of compensation, as crazy as that sounds.
Yeah, I mean, regardless of what you think about him as a person, the truth is that he met the targets that the board set out for him initially. He, raised the value of the company by multiple times, and 56 billion is a lot of money. I mean, it's unfathomable for most people. But I think, yeah, if they want to retain him, they want, he's intertwined with the company. He is Tesla. Tesla is Elon Musk, and so I think they need to do what they can to keep him around. I think it remains to be seen if the judge actually lets this vote fly, though.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that was interesting, too, is the shareholders also voted to move the incorporation from Delaware, from the state of Delaware, to the state of Texas, where Tesla is now based in Austin, Texas. In fact, they did their annual meeting in Austin, I think, as all this came down. I'm not sure how that affects a suit that originated in Delaware. I don't know if you could just change venues and off you go, but we shall see how that unfolds. I think it's kind of interesting all the way around.
Yeah, it is an interesting move, given how many companies incorporate in Delaware because of the privacy and the things that you get from that state. To move to Texas, I guess, he might feel like they'll have a better shot at getting him paid.
Yeah. Well, that going on. I think they've moved some of their other incorporations to Nevada, which I think has similar laws to Delaware in terms of being a fairly friendly state in which to incorporate, should you want to do that. One company that's not going to incorporate anytime soon is Fisker, because they're kind of unincorporating, as a matter of fact. They have filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Of course, this is bankruptcy protection. This doesn't mean they're totally going away. But, I've got to wonder if that isn't imminent or going to happen over the horizon here. They have listed their net assets at somewhere between $500 million and $1 billion. And their liabilities, here's a big spread of liabilities, Chris, between $1 billion and $10 billion. I don't know what accounting firm is doing their accounting, but that strikes me as a pretty wide swath. $9 billion with a B. This company has just not done well from the get-go, and of course, this is Henrik Fisker's second car company bankruptcy. I don't know that people will be lining up to invest with him again.
Yeah, taking a look back at their business operations, they were losing customer deposits, they were fumbling service orders, they were fumbling invoices and losing things here and there. So, at the end of the day, I guess this really isn't all that surprising if you look back at the history over the past, 12 to 16 months or so. At the same time, it's a shame. I was really looking forward to the Ocean. It looked like a compelling design. Henrik is a brilliant car designer, regardless of his ability to run a car company. So, yeah, I mean, I think nobody really wins here, obviously, but I hope they're able to maintain service long enough to keep the customers' vehicles that are already in the wild on the road for a while.
Yeah. I mean, here's something that I found interesting, too. Apparently, they have produced, of course, they weren't building. They didn't have a manufacturing operation. They outsourced their manufacturing. But 10,000 Oceans, 10,000 of their models have been built. Only about fewer than 5,000 were delivered to customers. But that means, there's a bunch of Oceans out there, Fisker Oceans, that are about to be orphaned. And that's a strange thing, too, isn't it?
Yeah, it's surprising to me that another established car company hasn't swooped in and grabbed up some of these assets, specifically the designs. Fisker had a couple of vehicles, or has had, or announced a couple of vehicles on the way before all this started happening. So, I think it could still happen, but it's very surprising it hasn't happened already.
Yeah, well, I think
They probably know something we don't, obviously.
Well, there's a ton of electric vehicles out there and seeking fewer buyers than there are. So I don't know that a car company wants to acquire all that, but I think there's a lot to like about his designs, about the designs of these vehicles. They're pretty cool. And speaking of designs, and maybe not so cool, I don't know how you feel about it, but there is the 2025 BMW X3. It is the all-new fourth generation of the vehicle. It's been a very, very popular vehicle. Makes sense. It's in a very popular segment. I've seen pictures of this. You probably have too. What's your overall take on the looks of this thing?
I don't understand this need to overdo literally every part of a vehicle design. I mean, the X3 was always one of my favorites in the BMW's lineup because it was more subdued than the X5, the X7, some of their sedans, especially the electric vehicles and the M cars. And now they moved it back into that realm, right? So now the X3 looks like a shrunken down X7, X5. It's got the beefier lines and everything. Yeah, I get it. It looks sportier, but it just isn't so much to my taste, I guess. The grille, the squared off front end, it's not really what I don't love it.
Yeah, I mean, I have always liked the kidney grille, the kind of classic BMW kidney grille. That's cool. I don't know that I need it at 200 or 400%, right? I mean, and that's what we're seeing in these latest designs, and I just think they kind of look awkward to me. And I've been a huge fan of BMW forever and ever, and a big fan of BMW's styling, probably since the 60s or something like that. So I'm a little taken aback by what they're doing here. And apparently it doesn't negatively affect their sales, but I just don't know where they're going with their styling. They're, with the functionality, I think very, very cool stuff.
Yeah, what you end up with is an angry Darth Vader looking helmet on the front end of every one of these vehicles. But as you mentioned, the X3, it's always been a playful, it's a comfortable SUV. It's fun to drive, even in the non-M formats. It's been a great vehicle to drive. So, I think that they're going to stick with that. It'll probably still be the same or more of the better stuff that comes with it. But styling matters, even though it doesn't affect the performance really all that much. People care about it. I care about it. You care about it. So it's a surprising move. I know that they've been down this path for a few years now, so they're pretty invested in it. But again, it's not for me.
Yeah, one of the things I find interesting is they tout their new iDrive 9, their infotainment system, ahead of the powertrains, and I just think that's emblematic of where we are these days. That a lot of the development work is going into these infotainment systems and other electronics, and much less so powertrain.
Yeah, we've talked about this before. It's really interesting how automakers have shifted their marketing talk from, 20, 30 years ago when you would see horsepower and torque and acceleration numbers pretty, paramount above all the other things. And now it's buried, 8, 9, 10 paragraphs down in the press release on some of these vehicles. So it is interesting to see, iDrive is what it is. It's one of the better of the premium interfaces, out of Audi, Mercedes, some of the other guys there. But it is an interesting shift, as you point out.
Right. Well, when we come back, we will have some very fascinating road test vehicles, the Subaru Crosstrek and the Toyota 4Runner. So stay with us for that, and we'll be right back right here on America on the Road. Welcome back to America on the Road with Chris Teague, Jack Nerad back with you, and it is road test time. And we've got some off-roaders to talk about, maybe one more serious than the other, but certainly some off-roading can be done by both of the vehicles we've got to talk about this week, and that's kind of exciting. Chris, you were driving the Subaru Crosstrek. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I spent the week behind the 2024 Subaru Crosstrek Sport. This is the mid-range trim. I think I drove the Wilderness a few months ago. We talked about it. That's the most expensive model you can buy, but pricing here starts around $27,000 for the base model. The very top Wilderness model, as I mentioned, is around $34,000. My Sport model came in at just under 32 with options. So, you get quite a bit for your money here, and I'll go into that in just a minute. But before I do, have you driven the Crosstrek recently, Jack?
I have. I'm not sure how recently, but I certainly have driven it, and I've driven this iteration of it. And I've always liked the vehicle. It's one of the most popular of the Subarus, that's for sure.
Yeah, you get a lot for your money, as I said. So the base engine is a 2.0 liter four-cylinder with 152 horsepower, but the Sport trim and a couple of others get a larger 2.5 liter four-cylinder engine, making 182 horsepower, 178 pound-feet of torque. All-wheel drive is standard as it is on most Subaru vehicles, and you get a continuously variable transmission here. So 182 horsepower doesn't sound like a lot on paper. It doesn't look like a lot on paper, but it's okay in this vehicle. I'll say that, there were plenty of times when I found myself having to put my foot down a little bit harder than I expected to get up off the line. But, cruising around town, it's a relatively quiet vehicle. The CVT doesn't let the engine, whine and wail like it does in some models. Unfortunately, if you like a manual transmission, the Crosstrek dropped it for 2024. You used to be able to get it, I believe, in the base model and maybe the Sport as well. But now you only get the CVT. This vehicle has 8.7 inches of ground clearance, Jack. And while this is not what I would consider a hardcore off-roader, that's more than enough to get into some trouble off the pavement. I think, it definitely looks like it could do more than it can, but what you get out of that is a smooth ride in town. So if you're driving this vehicle mainly on road, which most people will, that ground clearance, the suspension, it's very forgiving. The vehicle doesn't lean a lot in the corners, but again, it soaks up most of the bumps and the bangs, especially on the torn pavement that we have here. Inside this Sport model had cloth upholstery. You get heated front seats and 5 seats across, or 5 seats total with 3 across in the back. I have to tell you that the front seats are very nicely supported, very, very spacious, nicely padded. The back seats are a little bit lacking in leg room for me. And now that my 11-year-old daughter is almost as tall as my wife, if not a little bit taller than my wife, she's noticing some of the deficiencies in leg room back there too. But you do get a decent amount of cargo space. You get 19.9 cubic feet with the seats up and 54.7 with the seats down. And this vehicle does not have a dramatically sloping roof or anything that cuts into the cargo space. So if you have a dog or a larger item, you can throw it back there and cruise without much trouble at all. The standard infotainment setup here, Jack, and I want to get your opinion on this, is a dual 7-inch screen setup. My test car came with the optional 11.6-inch screen. It is a portrait-oriented screen, so it's tall and narrow in the dash. Subaru's Starlink infotainment, to me, we mentioned this a couple weeks ago when I drove the Outback and the Forester. There's just too much going on here. You have literally every vehicle control built into the infotainment system, and it just isn't as responsive as it needs to be to have that much responsibility for vehicle operations. What do you think about Starlink and how it compares to like Honda or Ford or anybody else?
Well, I think we just talked about it in the last segment, how car companies are spending so much development time, and rightly so, on their infotainment systems and these kinds of systems, because they're so critical to customer satisfaction. I mean, if you see what irritates people, and I'm pretty close to the J.D. Power people, and I see what is very irritating to people in their studies, it's infotainment. And you're talking about something that is a difference maker for you. You're going to use that system every day, multiple times. And if it isn't responsive, or you have trouble with it, or you have to wade through menus to turn on the heated seats or change something like that, you're going to be upset with that.
Yeah, the interesting thing here is the only control not in the infotainment system are the heated seats. So like you get a physical control for that in the front, but everything else, the automatic start stop, the climate controls, everything is built in. And as I said, there is some lag time in between a touch and it actually registering that input. So could be a little bit better there, but I feel like we've talked about it enough now, so we can move on. But the Sport has a limited Subaru EyeSight setup. So it doesn't have blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alerts, or parking sensors, or adaptive cruise control. But it does have forward collision alerts, automatic emergency braking, lane departure alerts, lane keep assist, and all that stuff. So for 32 grand, Jack, I think that you get quite a bit out of this vehicle. It's lacking some of the luxury features that the top trims bring, but this is a Crosstrek. It's meant to be a little bit rugged, a little bit playful. So I think they did a good job with it, and the price is right here.
Yeah, I think they found their niche with this thing. It's kind of different than all its competitors, and I think that has served it quite well. So
I agree.
There's certainly a market for that. And speaking of something that's different, and it's also on the verge of changing yet again, it's the 2024 Toyota 4Runner. And typically, this is the vehicle that is about to be replaced by an already announced 2025 version. And we'd be less likely to test this vehicle. But I think in this particular instance, maybe a lot of people are really interested in getting the 2024. And one of the reasons is the V6 engine, because it is going to be replaced by a turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. And I think a lot of people really like this V6 engine. They like the simplicity of it, the fact that it is not turbocharged. And I think there's some skepticism about the turbocharged 4-cylinder. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I agree. And some of the reports coming out about the newer turbocharged 6-cylinder engines in the Tundra and other vehicles, that's only going to give buyers pause, especially since the 4Runners had that V6 for God knows how many years now. They've had enough time to work out all the bugs.
Well, this version of the 4Runner was introduced during the Obama administration. So that's a while ago, right? It is a traditional truck-based body-on-frame SUV. It will be in 2025 as well. It can be configured as a 2 or 3-row vehicle. It comes in 7 different trim levels. I won't read them all off to you, but trust me, there are 7, many of which are TRD off-road type vehicles or sport vehicles with Toyota Racing Development, TRD. The vehicle I drove was the TRD Pro. It is a 4x4 only, which kind of makes sense that it would be that, because this is the heavy-duty off-roader. It's at the top of the lineup. You can get one for significantly less money than this, but this has our as-tested price in this vehicle was $56,624. So, that's a fairly stout price for a vehicle of this size. As I mentioned, it has the 4-liter normally aspirated V6, 270 horsepower. You can tell the age of this powertrain by the fact that it has a 5-speed automatic transmission. Rear drive is the standard configuration. Part-time 4-wheel drive can be specified across the lineup, and that's what you get in the TRD Pro. And actually the Limited, which is kind of the on-street version, has its own 4-wheel drive system, full-time 4-wheel drive system. Fuel economy is not its forte. 17 miles per gallon in combined driving. That's fine. Toyota Safety Sense is the ADAS, or the Advanced Driver Assist Systems, in this vehicle, and a pretty good array of them, although this is an older platform, so not everything that's new, but pretty good stuff. You can get a surround view camera system, for example, those kind of things, and just a lot of automatic things like blind spot warning and rear cross traffic warning. They are not for some reason, they're not part of Toyota Safety Sense, but they're standard anyway. So there's some internal Toyota thing that I don't understand that makes that happen.
Honda likes to do that too.
Yeah. And it gets a 5-star safety rating from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Gotta like that. I got a feeling you're a fan of this vehicle, and a fan probably of this generation of vehicle. Talk about that a little.
I am. And, it's dated. There's no way to get around that. But I think part of the charm is that it is bulletproof to a degree. Like I said before, Toyota's had time to work out all the kinks in this powertrain. And its simplicity is part of what makes it fun to drive off-road, right? Like, there's not a lot of waiting for a turbo to spool up. There's no manual transmission. There's all these things, like they come together and it just works on the trail. And besides all that, it's a very comfortable vehicle, even on the road, despite being a body on frame off-roader, with the elevated ground clearance that you get in the TRD models. It's still pretty comfortable. And I don't mind the styling so much. So, I think there are a lot of reasons to be fond of the older 4Runner. I think time will tell how the turbocharged 4-cylinder engines do in the new generation.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of styling, a lot of people love this thing. I mean, this was a real crowd favorite in my driveway over the course of the last week. It has that massive roof rack that, you could have a band play up there, a 3-piece band or something like that. Kind of crazy, but got a ton of attention. You can tell it's a little bit old in terms of its infotainment system, 8-inch touchscreen display with wired Android Auto, wired Apple CarPlay. So that's, a no-go for a lot of people. The TRD Pro has a 15-speaker JBL audio system. So I like that. I'm listening to America on the Road podcast and hearing my own dulcet tones and rich stereo. Wi-Fi Connect, of course, becoming more and more important, so can do that. It also has crawl control, which is essentially all-terrain, low-speed cruise control, so that's good stuff. Multi-terrain systems. From a comfort and convenience point of view, it's fairly modern. It doesn't really show its age inside the cabin. I think it's a good-looking vehicle with the right kind of stuff. As you mentioned, pretty comfortable. Typically, a 5-passenger vehicle is the way to go in this thing. I think the third row is a bit iffy, but it has a ton of cargo space, 47.2 cubic feet of cargo area behind the second row if you have a 2-row vehicle. So all in all, this is one to look at. I mean, I think there probably going to be a shortage of these in the marketplace because there is some skepticism, I think, over the new version of the 4Runner.
Yeah, I agree with that. And especially if you're looking at the older model, you can avoid the rush on the new one and maybe get a deal instead of paying a markup.
Yeah. So look for that. I think 2 vehicles to look for, the Crosstrek from Subaru and, of course, the 2024 Toyota 4Runner, a crowd favorite. So look for both of those. This week, our special guest who is coming up in the next segment is Matt DeLorenzo. He's a friend of the program. He is the author of a book called How to Buy an Affordable Electric Car and an auto industry expert. So stay with us for our interview with Matt, and we'll be right back right here on America on the Road. Welcome back to America on the Road with co-host Chris Teague. I'm Jack Nerad, and with us is our guest this week, Matt DeLorenzo. He's author of How to Buy an Affordable Electric Car, a Tightwad's Guide to EV Ownership. Matt, welcome back to America on the Road. We have a terrific guest for you. This is Jack Nerad, and with me is a guy who's been on the show a lot. His name is Matt DeLorenzo, automotive expert, the author of How to Buy an Affordable Electric Car, a Tightwad's Guide to EV Ownership. He is also the proprietor of Tightwad Garage, tightwadgarage.com. So look for that online. And Matt, thanks so much for being with us. We appreciate it.
It's always great being with you, Jack.
I love to talk to you, Matt, because you just know so much about the auto industry. You know so much about cars. You know so much about electric vehicles now. And we're kind of, I would say, at a crossroads, maybe a lull. I'm not sure where we're at in terms of electric vehicles, but how would you characterize it?
I would say it's a pause in a way. Electric vehicle sales are still growing, but they're not growing at the rate that everybody had expected or predicted or mandated. So, because of this pause, a lot of people are beginning to reassess this whole idea of a transition to electric vehicles. There are a lot of people who believe it's an all or none proposition, and I think that's being, put to the test, and it shows that that's just not going to be our future. But on the other hand, I see a lot of manufacturers now paying attention to the fact that they do need more affordable cars out there as substitutes for normal everyday cars that most people drive. The problem is they're still one or 2 years out. The Volvo EX30 is a highly anticipated entry level EV. It is just starting to come out now, and a lot of these other people, like Kia, introduced this EV3. It's still at least a year away, if not more.
Yeah, yeah. Well, one hope, I guess, hope in quotes, for affordable electric cars is Chinese electric cars, Chinese-built electric cars, and then suddenly there's 100% tariff on those cars that I think would absolutely make that virtually impossible to bring those into the country or close to it. I'm hard pressed to figure out how you could go past that, and I guess maybe Volvo is going to try with the EX30. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think there are a lot of EV proponents who are beating the drum to see these Chinese EVs come in. My view is be careful what you ask for. If you want to have an indigenous automotive base, the last thing you do is let in government subsidized vehicles from around the world from a country that already controls a lot of the critical materials that are used to create the batteries in these vehicles. We may mine a lot of lithium in the US. It all goes to China to get processed. So I'm a big believer that we need to go slow when it comes to China, because we may not like the way the world looks if we're flooded with Chinese EVs.
Yeah, true enough. I mean, we certainly want a domestic auto industry, whether it's domestic brands or brands that are building a lot of cars here that are from overseas countries. We certainly would like to see Americans still employed in the auto industry. It's a big employer of Americans across the country. I have to question, Matt. Some people suggest that we're in a lull, but we're going to see a total transition to electric cars at some point. I don't know that that's going to happen in my lifetime. I'm hard pressed to believe it would. And I think as we talk about what electric cars are appropriate for what people and for what's life stage you're in and all of that, we're finding that electric cars are a great supplemental car, or a good car as long as you have a gasoline powered car also in your fleet. What's your take on that? Do you think we're going to get to a 100% transition to electric cars in a decade or two?
No. And I think you see the renewed interest in hybrids as a solution. And I think when it comes to heavy duty, like over the road trucks, things like that, batteries are heavy. So if you already have a vehicle that's supposed to be hauling a load, the last thing you really want to do is to be hauling around heavy batteries to help move the vehicle. We have hybrid vehicles right now on our railroads. Diesel locomotives are actually hybrid diesel electric powered vehicles that can pull a tremendous amount of weight. So I think it just depends on what the purpose is. I think for most people, having at least one electric car as in the fleet makes sense. But it makes sense to have it supplemented by either a hybrid or a plug-in hybrid for road trips and other uses. Carrying, I still think a vehicle like an all-electric Hummer is a waste. These big off-road vehicles, they have no business being 100% electric. Smaller, lightweight, something the size, the Scouts coming out, I can see that. Some Jeeps maybe, but a 9,000, 10,000 pound SUV is ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, I have to ask too, I mean, if we're looking at just part of the fleet becoming electric, I have to ask, what's the point? Why are we doing it? Why are we spending extra money? I mean, you could buy an inexpensive gasoline-powered car, much less expensive, if you as a second car, as opposed to having electric as a second car. I mean, an electric as a second car as a used vehicle might make sense now because they're dirt cheap, and a lot of people are afraid to buy a used electric vehicle. But it's not going to solve, if there is a problem to solve in terms of global climate change. Certainly a partial transition, getting the fleet up to, say, 25% electrics in 20 years is going to do about zero to limit carbon emissions and certainly limit climate change if we can actually do that.
Well, I think that having an electric vehicle can make sense for certain people. If you own a home and you can charge at home, it really is convenient. I mean, you don't have to go to the gas station. There is less maintenance with an EV. You don't have to take it in for an oil change. You still have to get things like, your tires rotated, your brakes taken care of, stuff like that. But I think that there's a certain convenience factor that as a secondary vehicle, it's still very convenient to own an EV. It's inconvenient when you have to build in an hour recharge session if you're going any distance. And that's where, hands down, fossil fueled vehicles win in the convenience area, because you just pop into a gas station and 5 to 10 minutes you're on the road again. So until they can get to that sort of infrastructure and recharge times on electric vehicles, it's a non-starter for it being an all-purpose, all-around, it's the only car I have,
right,
that a gas car can still do.
Well, and when we get there, it obsoletes every electric car that's on the road now, of course, as well, right? Or makes them much less valuable.
Yeah, oh, for sure. I think we're in a transition period. I think, there's new battery technologies that's always being promised. I think the challenge for people is the fact that this transition is not being consumer led. It's being pushed by manufacturers and policymakers. And anytime you have to push something on people, it's just not. It's not going to be a smooth transition, because people will say, well, why do I have to make this change? They haven't come up with a compelling reason yet for somebody to give up a gas powered car. There are some good reasons and fun reasons and different reasons that do make EVs attractive, but they're not to the point where they're gonna knock the gas vehicles out of the box.
Yeah. And I think, Matt, we're not too old curmudgeons saying, oh, electric cars are terrible and we shouldn't have them, or taking a political stance on these either. I mean, I'm in favor of great technology that works well for people. And my whole career has been advising people, giving the people the best advice I know how to give them. And if I thought of electric cars were a great solution for a large number of people, I would certainly say that. And if I thought they would solve, a global problem, I would also say that. And you certainly put your money where your mouth is. I mean, you've written the book, How to Buy an Affordable Electric Car. You drive an affordable electric car. You have that experience. So there are instances where I can see that they are very practical, and you can probably talk about many of them yourself, right?
Well, and my household, in case in point, the other vehicle we have is a plug-in hybrid. So we get a little best of both worlds there. We're not going to the gas station all the time. The part, this whole thing over politics and stuff, I think it gets to the point of choice, and people aren't being told that they have options with this, and that's what rankles them. It doesn't matter if you're a Republican or you're a Democrat. They don't like the idea. I know so many people who don't like the idea of saying this is all you can have. And I think until and the electric vehicles have to be able to make a more, and the manufacturers of those have to make a more compelling case on why that's a great alternative to other vehicles on the road.
Yeah. I mean, they have to make it rational from a fiscal point of view, from a financial point of view, right?
Yeah.
And it's just not right now. I mean, you're going to pay.
I think I was at Electrify America over the last weekend, or Friday. They had an industry day, and their keynote speaker got up and was just saying, cars are going to go away and it's going to be all electric and blah, you're in denial. That guy's a fossil fuel denier. I mean, you still need fossil fuels. You're still going to have petroleum making products, fueling vehicles. It ain't going away.
And generating electricity. I mean, we're seeing natural gas generating electricity in a lot of areas.
So the question is affordability and bending the cost curve down, which they've been saying for years and years and years. We're going to bend the cost curve down by 2025. It's going to cost the same to buy an electric car as it is a gas comparable car. Well, we're still not there yet. There's still a gap anywhere from $5,000 to $8,000 because of the cost of the batteries. And on top of it, we have a government that is bending up the cost curve on gas cars by more stringent fuel economy and emissions things. So basically, we have policies that are pushing brand new cars out of the reach of the average consumer, which I think is not a good place to be.
Yeah, I mean, I've written about that. I think that's a big, important aspect for the entire economy. If we get people out of the habit of buying a new car every 4 or 5 years, which they are in now, I mean, that threatens the auto industry, but that threatens a lot of jobs associated with the auto industry. And certainly, I mean, all you have to do is look at TV and look at the number of car ads that are dominating television to see how important the car industry is to the overall economy. And I think people just kind of miss that whole fact. And, and harking back to the Chinese, I mean, do we want to hand that over to a foreign power? I really don't think so.
I don't think so either. So we are in interesting times, as they say, and I think the message is getting through. And a lot of manufacturers are saying, yeah, maybe we need to do hybrids, and maybe we're not going to kill all these gas cars. You have some luxury car makers climbing down, like Mercedes and people like that, saying, well, maybe we're not going to go to an all-electric future. Even Cadillac has been making some noises. So it's worth watching. I think electric vehicles are great. There's going to be a lot of exciting products coming, but there's also exciting gas-powered hybrid, plug-in hybrids coming. So the more options available to people, the better.
Right. I couldn't agree more. One thing I want to talk to you about before I let you go, Matt, is auto shows. And auto shows are, I fell in love with the cars and the car industry in part because of auto shows I attended as a kid, right? I mean, I grew up in Chicago, went to the Chicago Auto Show. It was a really exciting time. I still remember it vividly, and it was a real long time ago now. I think we are walking away from auto shows. Certainly another major international auto show has just given up the ghost, and you've written about it. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, the Geneva Motor Show had been probably the preeminent international motor show. And the organizers tried to bring it back this year. They hadn't held one in Geneva for 5 years because of COVID. They rebooted it as a every other year show in all places, Doha, Qatar. And it's not the same. And I think there's two levels. There's the auto shows that you and I went to when we were kids. There are auto shows that you and I went to as adults, as professionals in the industry. And it's a much different beast from the professional side as it is from the consumer side. And the consumer side will always be there. I think you'll always have a Chicago Auto Show, New York Auto Show, local auto shows. They will always be there. What I'm seeing is that the professional side of the auto show, the media, the industry getting together, is going away. And a lot of launches that they would do at auto shows are doing virtually online. I think there's a tremendous loss of community. And I remember going to Geneva, and you would see all the captains of industry there. You would see guys like Roger Penske. You would see Formula One champions. You would see ad people, marketers, everybody, designers, anybody who was anyone.
I mean, Lee Iacocca, Bill Ford. I mean, you see all of them,
and they were accessible, and the industry could talk to it. journalists would get great stories, good questions would be asked. There'd be, I think, a higher level of understanding of what's going on in the industry and its impact on people was obtained by having these auto shows where the industry would gather. It's not the case anymore. And I think as we go to more virtual, we have more influencers who are more interested in being seen than seeing what's there. We've lost something, and it's kind of a sad day for us. I have some tremendous memories of meeting some of the leaders of the industry and having a meal with them and just learning about what makes them tick. And you could see if they were really car enthusiasts or if they were just businessmen, and it would be reflected in the business decisions that they would be making. And you could almost predict what would happen to a car company by just taking the temperature of whoever was leading the company at the time.
I think we learned a lot, and maybe we even had a little bit of influence on what did happen. I remember being asked by some high-ranking folks at Jaguar when they were an independent, who should acquire them? Who should they find as their angel to acquire them? And they were really listening to us and that kind of thing. So that's the kind of thing we would see there. Another thing I think beyond that and beyond just the wonderfulness of that camaraderie with the industry is auto shows are losing premium marks. You're not seeing the Mercedes-Benzes, the Porsches, the BMWs, and others at a typical auto show, even a big city auto show, where you think they would be there. And I think that overall hurts the auto shows, because I think a lot of people want to come and at least looky-loo into that luxury stuff. Maybe they'll never buy, but certainly aspire to see. And it also, I think, damages their ability to just tantalize young people who might eventually end up wanting those vehicles. I think it's a big problem, I think, for current auto shows not to have those premium brands there. What are your thoughts on that?
I couldn't agree more. And I it astounds me that you don't see a Mercedes or a BMW at a New York or a Chicago or even an LA show. The thing is that it's opened the door for some new competition. I don't think Genesis would be as strong as they are today if it weren't for the fact that they're the only sort of premium brand besides Lexus who regularly shows up at these auto shows. And I think that gives them a foot in the door that they otherwise may not have had if they were competing on the same floor against BMW or Mercedes. So I think these things go through cycles. I think a lot of these premium manufacturers have been putting their eggs in the Concours, that basket. And I think that well could eventually run a little dry, and maybe they're going to have to come back to mainstream auto shows to attract customers, especially when they're going into these the electrification, and they're trying to attract more people, a wider band of audience than just the top 1%.
Yeah. Well, and I think just to make people feel comfortable about their electric vehicles, I would think that Cadillac, Mercedes-Benz, BMW, Audi, all of these brands that have heavy electric presence would want to make that clear to the general public and the luxury buyer both.
Right.
That, wow, these are genuine luxury cars. You're not giving up anything. In fact, you're probably gaining some things by going electric. And I think an auto show is a perfect place to do that.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, that whole international auto show circuit that I spoke about, it's pretty dead. I mean, the IAA, which was in Frankfurt, which was arguably the largest auto show in the world, is now in Munich. It's much smaller. Paris is going to be this year. It's not the same. Tokyo's not the same. But the regional big city shows still have some life left into them. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Well, I encourage anyone listening, if there is an auto show nearby, attend, because
Yes.
you can learn so much in a no pressure environment. I think they're terrific opportunities for consumers, and a lot of family fun.
Yep.
It's just, great entertainment for a lot of folks. Well, Matt DeLorenzo, always a pleasure to talk to you. I want to repeat again the name of your most recent book, How to Buy an Affordable Electric Car, A Tightwad's Guide to EV Ownership. Look for that. It's available, I think, on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, as I remember.
Yep. And you can come to my website, tightwadgarage.com, and there are links there. And you can also read the latest about my thoughts on Geneva and Kia EV3 and other subjects.
Yeah, so check it out, Tightwad Garage. And thanks so much for being with us, Matt. I almost forgot my own name, but I'm Jack Nerad. Thanks so much for being with us. And stay with us, everybody. We'll be right back right here on America on the Road. And that was our interview with Matt DeLorenzo, author of How to Buy an Affordable Electric Car, A Tightwad's Guide to EV Ownership. Thanks to Matt for being with us. Always great to talk to Matt, isn't it, Chris?
It is. He's a great guy.
He's a terrific guy, very knowledgeable guy, former editor of Road Track, among other things. I think we have time to take a listener question. So let's go ahead and do that. We love to hear your questions and love to hear from you. And thanks so much for being with us on America on the Road. This question comes from Ross. He's in Bakersfield, California. He says this: I was thinking about buying a new Camry, and I found out that all the new 2025 models are hybrids. I don't think I want a hybrid. What's going on here? What's your reaction to that, Chris?
Yeah, I think I would ask why you don't think you want a hybrid. I think in some of these vehicles, specifically the more mainstream passenger vehicles, the hybrid system kind of fades into the background for the most part. And in a lot of cases, the hybrid vehicles are more fun to drive than their gas-only counterparts. We've talked about this with the Honda CR-V, the Honda, different Honda models, and Toyota does hybrids better than almost anybody. So I would argue that I think the new Camry, without even having driven it, would be on par, if not a little bit better than the one it replaces. And you can always get all-wheel drive and those sorts of things too. If that's not your flavor, I mean, you still have the ability to go to a Honda Accord for gas model. You can still do a Nissan Altima with a gas model. And Kia and Hyundai have their own sedans as well. So you have alternatives, but I think I would argue that I would rather you drive the Camry. If you like the Camry, go drive it before you make a decision, because I think you'll be surprised.
I agree with everything you say, Chris. And at the same time, I can understand Ross's little bit of pause in getting a hybrid, because let's face it, they're more complicated, right? And if you keep your vehicle for a long, long time and require it to be serviced somewhere along the line by somebody who isn't a Toyota service technician, by an independent shop, then working on a hybrid is going to be much more difficult, I think, or potentially more problematic than working on a conventional vehicle. So I kind of get that. I think we're going to the place where virtually everything is going to be hybridized. That will be standard issue. I think certainly the longevity will be very, very strong. I expect a Toyota to have great quality and reliability. But at the same time, I kind of get where Ross is coming from here.
Yeah, I think that these questions are going to persist for a while. Hybrids have been around for what, 20 or more years at this point in time, but they still aren't as prolific or as widespread as normal gas vehicles. So I can understand the questions. Again, I will just reiterate. I think that if you're having questions about it, the best thing to do is to go take a drive.
Yeah. Well, and they drive great. Totally agree with you there. Before we go, I'd like to mention my newest book, Dance in the Dark. It's a crime thriller inspired by true crime. And of course, I follow crime. I write about crime. So if you are interested in that, check it out at Amazon. It's available in both an ebook and a paperback. If you like our show, and we hope you do, please pass it on. Listen to it on this radio station each week. Let your friends know where you will listen to America on the Road. And if you want to pass along a podcast, it's a simple task, isn't it?
It is. A quick Google search will bring us up on all the major platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the other platforms. You can like us, download us, leave us a review. All those things help us out, and you can take us wherever you go.
Yes, indeed. Our thanks to our Sports Byline Network stations for carrying America on the Road. We appreciate that. And most of all, thanks to you for listening to America on the Road. We're honored by the fact that you listen to us, and we hope you will join us again right here next time for another edition of America on the Road.